"We emptied your bank account and rented out your place," my mother announced. Then the real nightmare began. I held the phone away from my ear, staring at the screen as if it might confess it was a prank. In the background, my father's low, satisfied laugh leaked through. "Your brother's dream wedding needed a sponsor," he said. "Thanks for being such a team player. Goodbye." The line went dead. I expected a wave of grief, a flood of rage, maybe hot tears. Instead, I exhaled slowly and felt my lips curl into a quiet smile, not because it was funny, because they had no idea what they'd just triggered. My name is Elena Ross, and my family spent 2 decades treating me like their personal safety net. To them, I was the quiet one, the reliable ATM who never complained, the invisible daughter who sacrificed and smiled. They honestly believed they'd left me with nothing. No savings, no home, no fight left. They thought I'd show up at the wedding broken and desperate, another silent donor for my brother's endless entitlement. But they didn't know what I'd been building in the shadows. They didn't know whose signature really controlled that property. And they certainly didn't guess what was waiting inside the wedding gift I was about to hand over. They took my silence for weakness. Big mistake. I placed the phone in my purse, glanced out at the city skyline, and whispered, "Enjoy the party." Because Monday morning, every penny you stole comes back with interest. Morning arrived like nothing had changed. Sunlight on the kitchen counter, birds outside the window. But everything had shifted. The apartment they claimed to have sold? Still standing around me, untouched, still legally mine, for as long as I could remember. I had been the family's quiet solution. When my brother Derek flunked out of college, I covered his re-enrollment fees. When my parents' small business went under, I drained my savings to pay their debts. And when they called it love, I believed them. Have you ever given so much that you forgot where you ended and they began? Derek was the golden child. His failures were learning experiences, his recklessness passion. My achievements were just expected. Family helps family, my mother always said, but that promise only ever flowed one way. The apartment they thought they'd stolen was the product of 7 years of double shifts, frozen dinners, and a relentless refusal to give up. It was supposed to be my freedom. Instead, they tried to take it like I wouldn't notice, or so they believed. That afternoon, I opened my laptop and pulled up the files again. Every contract, every signature, every legal trap, all waiting. They thought they had stripped me bare. What they missed was that they'd signed away their own leverage years ago. That night, I didn't sleep. I reread every clause, slowly, deliberately, savoring the precision. The desk lamp cast a warm glow over the papers that would soon shatter their delusion. They believed they'd sold my apartment. What they never realized was that they had never owned it in the first place. How could they be so careless with something that wasn't theirs? Years earlier, when their business collapsed, they came to me desperate. I agreed to help, but with one condition. They would transfer their remaining assets into a temporary trust under my name, to protect them from creditors. They signed without reading a single line. The apartment they tried to sell? It was held in that same trust, untouchable, protected, beyond their reach. The sale they arranged for Derek's wedding was legally void from the start. And the buyer? My own attorney. Every signature, every transfer, every detail had been anticipated long before that phone call ever came. The next morning, a courier delivered a formal notice to my parents' house. Inside, certified documents freezing the fraudulent sale and initiating legal proceedings for misrepresentation. I pictured their faces as they opened the envelope, confusion, disbelief, then dread. But that was just the appetizer. As I tied a soft ivory ribbon around the final wedding gift, I smiled. Tomorrow, at my brother's celebration, they would toast their victory. And then, in front of everyone, the truth would land like a bomb. The venue glittered under crystal chandeliers. White roses cascaded down every pillar. Laughter and string music filled the grand ballroom. To the guests, it was a flawless wedding. To me, it was a stage. I arrived alone in a simple cream-colored suit, understated, deliberate. Conversations dipped as I entered. Some guests recognized me. Others whispered. Curious, my parents stood by the entrance, greeting everyone with polished smiles, as though nothing in the world had ever gone wrong. When they saw me, their faces tightened. "You came," my mother said, surprise thinning her voice. "Of course," I replied. "We're family." My father smirked, that same smug sound I'd heard on the phone. "Figured you'd be too embarrassed after losing everything." I held his gaze. "You really shouldn't assume. What happens when the person you betrayed shows up smiling?" Before he could answer, Derek approached, glowing in his tailored tux. "Glad you made it," he said lightly. "Couldn't have pulled this off without you." His words hung in the air, truer than he knew. Guests gathered for the ceremony. I took my front row seat, the ivory-wrapped gift beside me, its ribbon gleaming. Inside, documents sealed, certified, undeniable. As the officiant called for quiet, I folded my hands. Let them celebrate, because before midnight, their illusion would shatter in front of everyone. The ceremony unfolded perfectly. Soft music, Derek and his bride exchanging promises under an arch of roses. Cameras flashed. Applause rolled. To everyone else, it was a beautiful beginning. To me, it was the final inhale before the scream. At the reception, champagne flowed. My parents worked the room, basking in admiration, their pride brighter than the chandeliers. When the gift table opened, I rose and placed my ivory package among the satin boxes and envelopes. "For the happy couple," I said quietly. My mother's smile turned sharp. "How thoughtful," she purred. Moments later, Derek lifted my box for the traditional opening. Guests crowded closer. The room hushed as he loosened the ribbon and unfolded the paper. Inside lay a velvet folder. He opened it casually, then froze. The color left his face. "What is this?" he whispered. My father leaned over, his smirk dissolving. My mother's hands began to shake as she read the bold legal heading on the first page, Notice of Fraudulent Property Transfer. Murmurs rippled through the ballroom like a wave. I lifted my glass, voice steady. "Think of it as my wedding gift," I said, "and a receipt for everything you stole." The room went silent. Music faded. Whispers turned to gasps. Derek stood paralyzed, the velvet folder trembling. My father snatched the documents, scanning with rising panic. My mother's face drained to ash. "This is absurd," my father snapped. "You're ruining your brother's wedding." I met his eyes. "No, I'm correcting a fraud." Derek's bride stepped back, confused. "What's going on?" No one answered. My father's voice rose. "Those papers mean nothing. That apartment was ours." "Was it?" I replied softly. At that moment, the ballroom doors swung open. 2 uniformed officers entered with my attorney. Conversation died. Every eye turned as they approached the gift table. "Good evening," my attorney said. "We're here regarding the illegal sale of a trust-held property." Gasps echoed. My mother's hands trembled. "You wouldn't dare." "I already have," I said. The officer stepped forward. "Mr. and Mrs. Ross, you need to accompany us for questioning on fraud and misrepresentation." Derek staggered back. The document slipped from his fingers. The wedding dissolved into stunned silence. My father stared at me, fury and disbelief colliding. How could you do this to your own family? I lifted my glass, unshaken. You did it first. The ballroom never recovered. Whispers stormed through the guests. Some stared in disbelief, others looked away, unable to watch a family's collapse dressed in formal wear. Derek's bride stood frozen, bouquet shaking, reality settling over her perfect day. What did you do? She whispered to him. Derek said nothing. My parents were escorted toward the exit. Their proud postures crumbled into silence and shame. My mother's eyes brimmed, not with sorrow, but with the slow horror of lost control. My father wouldn't meet my gaze. The music stopped. Laughter died. The celebration ended in a vacuum. Derek approached me last, voice unsteady. You didn't have to do this today, he said, desperate. It was my wedding. I met his eyes. You sold my home to pay for it. His shoulders sagged. I thought you'd forgive us. Forgiveness doesn't mean letting you steal. He lowered his head, mute. As I turned to leave, guests parted silently. I walked toward the exit with steady steps, the ivory ribbon still in my hand. Their victory had lasted one day. The truth would last forever. The night air was cool outside the venue. Behind me, the wedding hall buzzed with chaos and scandal. I didn't look back. By morning, the news had spread. Legal notices froze my parents' remaining assets. The fraudulent sale was voided. My apartment, untouched, protected, was restored to me completely. Justice had been quiet, but it had been absolute. Days later, I stood in my living room, sunlight pouring through the tall windows. I ran my hand along the wall. No longer the daughter they'd used, no longer the silent provider they'd taken for granted. Weeks passed. My parents' case moved forward. Derek's marriage, built on deception, crumbled under the weight of truth. I heard the news without satisfaction. Their downfall wasn't my victory. It was simply the bill coming due. One evening I stood on my balcony, city lights shimmering below. The silence was peaceful. For the first time in my life, I belonged only to myself. They had taken my trust. They had taken my loyalty. But they had never taken my strength. If you've ever been underestimated by the people who should have protected you, hit like and subscribe to Winds of Thought for more stories of quiet revenge. I turned back inside, closed the door, and smiled. The life they tried to steal, I'd already built it to keep.